Welcome to Plot Armor Online, where authors log in, level up, and sling spells of prose across the realms of fantasy and sci-fi. Dive deep into world building, battle-broken character arcs, and explore magic systems that defy the laws of reality. And maybe logic, too. Each week, a new companion is summoned to raid the latest releases and roast tired tropes with fiery hot takes. Whether you're crafting the first chapter or slaughtering darlings in your 10th rewrite, grab your quill, equip your shield, and roll for initiative. This is Plot Armor Online, hosted by Kevin and Matthew, two scribes on a quest through the multiverse of authorship.
Good day to you, sir. Doing well, doing well. Absolutely. It's he's basically the wolf that will eventually eat the world. And he's stumbled upon by one of two brothers, and they're about to take their trials and prove their manhood, essentially. Be able to join the society. And what was fun about the entire process is it's a bit of a mashup of different mythologies. It's kind of taking elements. The Norse mythology specifically is like very present, but there's also elements from Irish mythology. There's a little bit of the Book of Judges in there for sure, with the bronze, this warrior class called the bronze, and they basically all sort of mesh into very much a Norse inspired, but it's its own mythology for sure. Copy that. So my name is Sean. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland originally. I've been living in Los Angeles for a long time now, almost to the point where I could call myself a resident, or I am a resident, but almost It was a big move for sure. I basically thought I would try my luck in the studio system in Hollywood. So I've been out here working in editorial for several years. And basically, the long and the short, I've been writing my entire life. This is the first time I've ever published, other than some short stories. I've published some short stories in the past. I wrote graphic for a graphic novel anthology that was previously published called 321 Fast Comics. But basically, I can hear you. Volumes maybe a little bit low. I can hear you. It's just a little bit on the low side.
Testing, 1 2 test. Testing, test.
I can hear you well. It's good levels, and I can hear you. Oh no, no worries. Where did we lose the train there? Copy that. Yes, I basically I made the move out to Los Angeles, and I just tried my luck in the studio system, and uh, I've been working pretty consistently out there, and then there was a studio slowdown. So I thought I would do the thing that I've always meant to do, and I've been writing my entire life, and I decided I would publish for the first time. I always intended to publish, and I write very, very consistently, and it just felt like the right time to do it.
All right, audience, how is that? Is that better? Now you can hear me? All right. So,
Sounds good to me.
I swear it's like every week we have something going on, and I try not to. I'm trying to learn as much as I can on this soundboard and streaming stuff. And it's like, hey, but you're never going to be able to do it properly unless you know how to do audio engineering and streaming and podcasts and everything. And it's like you've got all of these tutorials. It's online, but it's only for like yourself and streaming your own video game. They don't tell you how to like mix in multiple camera feeds, multiple audio sources, have it all go out to the same thing. They're only streaming to Twitch. It's like crazy. Anyway, so you got to take that, compound it by like 5, and then then you actually get a decent podcast kind of thing. But anyway, all right. So moving on. So you wrote. We can. Good. Yeah. All right. So we've got some short stories now. Question, I hear a little twitch in there, and I don't know if it's just habit because sometimes I pick that up, or is it just ingrained in you from prior? Because you keep saying Roger that. Were you military at one point, or is that like a reason for moving, or is that just something that you've always been around, or you kind of?
It's interesting that you picked up on that. I am not military, but both my father and grandfather were military. So maybe it's a little bit in the blood.
So you grew up as like the military brat. You're like yes sir, all, like the whole time.
A little bit. My grandfather. I grew up on stories of my grandfather in World War II. He was a combat engineer.
Okay.
And my father was in the Navy. So my grandfather was in the Army, and my father was in the Navy. And he was a naval intelligence during Vietnam.
Oh, nice. My great grandfather was in the Korean War as a Army paratrooper, and he unfortunately he died over there, but he got field promoted.
Oh, wow.
Throughout the war up to first sergeant. And then that was on my mother's side. Nobody else served until me as far as that side of the family goes. My dad's side of the family, my dad was in the Marine Corps for like 3 years, and then he got kicked out. And then I think there was like some career Navy. There was a couple were like career Navy guys and stuff like that. But I retired. I got medically retired after 15 years. My body just said, "Screw it, I'm not doing this crap no more." So I moved on. Here we are, 9 years later, and I'm writing books and talking on podcasts. But anyway,
that's awesome, man.
So
and thank you for your service.
I never know how to respond to that, but thank you for your appreciation. So what made you want to get into writing? Like, I know you probably kind of touched on it already, but what was like the driving force? Like you said you did some short stories and stuff like that growing up. What really influenced you to try to like get into writing? Why do you want to put stories on paper?
Two of my biggest passions in life are literature and film. Um, so in a sense, I've always been around it. Growing up, like reading wonderful stories. There was this book that my mother passed down to me. It was the King Arthur book, and I want to say it's like from the 40s or 50s. At some point, I'll have to look it up. It's still at my parents' place in Maryland, but at some point I'll have to dig it up. But I remember it had the most incredibly graphic illustrations, like just very violent, but beautifully written story, beautifully written text. And I just remember reading that. I got a hold of it. I don't, now that I think about it, I don't know if she even gave it to me. I might have snooped, but I got into it, and I was starting to read it. And I was just completely floored by this parallel universe from another time, or this other world from another place. And it was just so beautifully written that I was just hooked from that point on.
Nice. So your kind of big introduction was Arthurian legends.
Yes, Arthurian legends, and I have to say I read a little bit of the Dragonlance and Ravenloft books,
Right on.
which definitely hooked me. I was a little older at that point, but
Yeah, I remember when
Vampire of the Mist.
I remember when my stepson was trying to get into reading, and I bought him the Dragonlance novels as like an intro, and he kind of read them, but he's he- uh, he's on the spectrum, like borderline, very very borderline. But he just wasn't a very reading kind of kid. He was more mechanical, so like he was trying to show interest, but he just never really picked it up. I enjoyed them. I kind of grew up on like R.A. Salvatore, Jack London, uh, Tolkien, the whole nine. George Orwell, Edgar Allan Poe, like the whole nine yards. Like all the great and wonderful and epic fan, and then the dark stuff. Yeah. So
I read. I got into a lot of those authors in high school. I would say a little bit later on, but yeah, huge Poe fan, huge Tolkien fan. I read Anthem for the first time in high school. That completely blew my mind. I've never read a book where I was completely floored by the final word of the book. It's like literally one word at the end. And
really,
I've never read a book where I mean, I've certainly read books where I was affected, but I've never read one where literally the last word of the novel just sent me flying backwards.
Excelsior. No, ones that do that for
It
me
was
is comic books, but anyway, I digress. uh so
but yeah,
so kind of on your book. Well, I saw someone, I think it was it Gibson? Kate Gibson asking earlier, like right before the thing. I saw it, but I didn't have a chance to answer on X. Was asking what the deep dive topic is today. And I hadn't really thought about it, and I was like, man, I'm gonna be so just everybody's gonna try to say Matthew runs, like carries the chatting on the podcast, and he's not here. Kevin's all out of sorts, and no, there's a lot more going on. I'm out of sorts because like the podcast video feed is all jacked up, the audio feed was jacked up. Anyway, so today's deep dive topic. Dum, dum, dum. I don't have that sound art yet, but what would you say? I know you said that you took a little bit of like Norse mythology and you took a little bit of Celtic and Gaelic mythology and stuff like that for your book. How how deep did you go in the research to try to accurately portray those portions of your I guess what I'm trying to say is like the topic is research. So like how deep did you get in your research whenever you were uh looking at this stuff up so that, you were on point or you wasn't trying to really like step on anybody's toes or anything cuz sometimes what was it I heard yesterday uh it was a podcast where um SS Sean Sean Fitzgerald was talking about Michael Crichton and how Jurassic Park and there's some stuff different from the book and the movie and how they someone else had mentioned about how like velociraptors were really like the size of chickens or something, so it was like really great like the research level. Just as an example. So how far did you get in your research for Under the Horn?
very deep. I have always been also a student of folklore and cultures in general, mythologies, things like that. And basically I took certain elements, like researched certain elements of the different language groups, like ancient Norse, and I took some ancient Saxon. And depending on the cultures that they were, I used certain words from the different cultures and sort of rework them. So, like for instance, Braun here, which is the entry level warrior in this society, it literally translates to Iron Warrior in Old Saxon. And then in terms of the mythological elements of the story, I took elements, and there's certainly elements that are inspired by, but it's not necessarily one to one. But it's in terms of the overall thing, the characters that are mentioned and the various gods that are mentioned, there will certainly be, for people who are immersed in these mythologies, they'll certainly see the basically where it was inspired by and then taken and put into a twist. So there's certain elements, like for instance in Norse mythology, Balder dies. He's the most beautiful god of all, and he dies. And in this mythology, he also dies. He's the guardian of the sky, and he dies. And his spirit is essentially what everyone's trying to reach in the afterlife. So he essentially becomes the god of the afterlife. So it kind of takes and remixes elements without ignoring or just completely appropriating and throwing it off to the side. I guess that would probably be the best way to describe it.
Okay. So kind of more just in, you did the research so that you could try to make your own, like put your own twist on it. And
Yes.
yeah, some books you get really close to, like as you're doing it, like how far deep in the weeds do you really have to go to make sure that like either you're A, portraying it right, or B, you're getting close enough to it to put your own spin on it and people will still get it. You know what I'm saying? It's really weird. Um I don't have it out yet, but on the big novel that I'm working on right now, that kind of pairs with my Curiosity series. It's there's a lot of herbalism in the early chapters because one of the main characters um, is a healer and an herbalist. She makes potions, salves, the whole nine yards, and it's the I wanted to try to get as close to accurate as possible by portraying stuff like feverfew and other foxglove and a few other like like those type of plants that would have been used back then and the names that they would have been used by, um, close enough to like people would recognize it, or if they didn't, then they would learn something, and that was always my kind of, you get a little bit of this and you can make some tea with it, or if you mix it in with some paste and do all this other stuff, then you got a salve, or if you channel your magic through it and hold it over and use it as a catalyst, you can create a protection spell. And that's some of the myth stuff that like I can't remember. There was a root that I used that had that. It was pretty cool. When I was looking it up, I was like, oh yeah, that sounds great. Let me put it in there. Um, but yeah, I was asking because you have what appears to be Fenrir, and you said is in almost all but name is what is the wolf's name in your book?
It is Fenrir. Yeah, it's
Okay,
it's it's that name is directly pulled, the Devourer of the World.
right.
And it was fun in doing the research that I wanted to essentially start it as a bit of a wilderness survival moment. Just really grounded, very, very intense, very physically, like a very, very much a grounded and physical threat to Erlon's life and presence. So I did a lot of wilderness survival research. Like I was like, how would you start a fire, if you were soaked and wet? How could you realistically, like, it does require some luck on his part, but the fact that he has the luck and knows what to do, it also shows they're a rugged society. It's very possible they'll be out in the wilderness by themselves at some point in their life, and they may have to make it. So the ability to kind of forage and survive off the land kind of demonstrate that. Probably the biggest thing I had to research is old wounds. Erlon absorbs a head wound earlier in the story, and he's basically working through that. So by the time he gets to his grandmother, who's helping him, heal his wound or tend to his wound, he has a wound that's fairly old. It's 2-3 days old. So I actually had to research how, what that would look like, and I might have even accelerated it slightly. But what the beginnings of an infection would look like, or or a mid-tier infection might look like. So just little moments, like especially when it comes to the reality of certain things, like when I really wanted it to feel grounded and present, like those are the moments I especially research very hard.
Wow. So you went all like gangrene deep description on the stuff, huh? Can you is there a delay?
A little bit of a delay,
Okay.
but I think you're back now.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's probably because I've got my feed going out to about 5 different sources right now. No, I was saying, like, so you kind of really went into, this is how it would kind of start, and then the the as the wound progressed, kind of. I mean, you went deep in that one. Uh, Usually, I you kind of expect some of our horror genre people to get into that. Um, what genre? I saw that you had. Hold on, let's pull it up. So we can find Under the Hearth. On, let's look at browsers. So I've got your website here. Can y'all see that? So sproauthor.godaddysites.com.